Hey, thank you for tuning in on this conversation on men and romantic relationship. This conversation was inspired by a few female friends of mine who continue to ask me casually, how do men show up romantically, whether it's in the single period, the dating period, or otherwise. So I gathered a few men, some of them single, some of them dating, none of them married, unfortunately. It would have been nice to have a married man in the chat as well. But I believe we had a very fruitful conversation in which we spoke about leadership as a man, purpose. We spoke about vulnerability, God, and time, and how time can play into the aspect of connection as well. I hope you enjoy. Feel free to share. I think this is a conversation that could really impart a lot of good on many communities. I think that these open conversations about connection, relationship, are ultimately beneficial for all of us. So again, thank you for tuning in and enjoy.
So my name is Tarek. Currently in a relationship. I've been in a relationship for a little over a year now. It's long distance, so it's been tough, but also, like getting through, being able to get through a year long distance, has really strengthened us. And I'm a creative based in New York. Do a lot of drawing, painting, photography, things of that nature. That's
Beautiful. How about you, Jamal?
What's up, everybody? I'm Jamal McKean Shabazz. I am single. What else? I'm in New York. I'm in Harlem. I'm originally from Atlanta, so I'm like back and forth quite a bit. And I'm a writer and I'm an illustrator. I'm working on some animation projects at the moment. And yeah.
Hi guys, my name is Eric. I am celibate actually, and I'm a photographer and filmmaker living in Brooklyn, New York.
What's up, everybody? I am single. I live in Harlem, and I'm an entrepreneur. I have my most recent company is called Gratitude Plus, and it's an app that helps you build a gratitude habit with a supportive community.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shola. I live in Brooklyn, single, and I'm an engineer.
Daniel. I'm in a relationship. I've been in a relationship since November, so it's fairly new. And yeah, I'm a photographer. I like to write, and I'm pursuing a degree in anthropology. I like to learn about culture and people. I thought this video chat would be a good idea because I have a few friends who just been seeking to understand men our age and how we interact with women romantically. It seems to be a hot topic amongst women, amongst people in general, obviously, but it's just something that's very pertinent to women because yeah, I think women are taught to consider romantic relationship as a core purpose in their lives. Whether that's good or bad, we can debate on that, but it's something that is like on our minds a lot, and I thought we can all talk about it, and
I guess I'll start. So I grew up in a single parent household. My mom and three of my sisters and one of my brothers, and so for me, women have been kind of like that support, that rock, the people who grounded me, the people who I'll go to, and people who would show and express love to me. I have a huge affinity towards women because of that. Growing up, seeing my mom struggle to support us, that just gave me a certain passion, and we just connected in a certain way. And not having many male role models or just male presence in my life, like I naturally was just drawn to women. And I think it's helped me to understand my relationship with my sisters, my mom. It helped me to understand like how to express myself, in ways that I think men are traditionally, or even boys aren't traditionally like exposed to. By seeing them express themselves, that gave me, I guess, consciously and sometimes not consciously, the ability to express.
really good. So it seems as if the way that you view women in your lives comes down to like the closest woman woman to you, your mother, your sister, and it seems as if that informs how you view women outside of your close network as well.
Definitely. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, so to piggyback off of Tarek, my mom is definitely, I sort of see her as a superhero. I just, even especially now that I have a little more perspective on all the things that she did, the fact that she worked and cleaned and cooked and all that, so consistently. And I'm like, wow, like I could barely, I could barely get my laundry done, when I'm running out of drawers, it's like, so just, yeah, that just understanding the capacity that she has. And when I see so many mothers, I'm a former teacher and I've done a fair amount of tutoring, still do now. you know, a lot of these moms are working full time, but they're still the ones that I'm communicating with. I'm not really as often communicating with the father. And then thinking about women my age, I think my a big part of my growth has been the way I look at women because growing up, yeah, I really just looking at hip hop videos and just like the whole culture, I really internalized, a lot of misogyny and just being able to take a step back and be like, wow, like, I mean, I think one of the most eye opening things, I was in Florida a couple winters ago. We went to the club with like my sister and some of my cousins. And they were walking down the street and like every dude was trying to grab them and they sort of was just like kept it moving. And in my eyes, I was like, I don't know how you do that. Like, yeah, I feel threatened, I'm not even you, so that just that whole experience has just really opened my eyes up and allowed me to see a lot of the just, yeah, strength is really when I see,
For me, I was also raised by my mother as well. Um, my mother and my dad broke up when I was like before I was even born, actually, because she just kind of realized that he wasn't necessarily ready to be a father yet and all that. Um, so in that regards to how I was raised, and I was also raised with my grandmother as well. So like it was like a back and forth thing. So those are like two presents in my life. So like my mother never wanted to baby me, um, even though she's my mom though. So I did, this is going to come up at times. But she always wanted me to be able to kind of stand on my own too. And I know that's largely because she realized that for herself. Because there were times where she was looking for certain people to be able to look out for her while she raised me, because she herself was scared. But after a while, she just kind of realized like, nah, it's just me and Jay. So let me focus on that. And so in that, I think that built in more strength in her to just kind of like that I was seeing that, because she didn't necessarily want me to grow up to be soft or anything like that, because that was always a reoccurring thing within my family members who'd be like, oh, that boy gonna grow up soft, being hanging around his mama, and it was like that all the time, that kind of thing. So like so I gathered a lot of independence and strength from her by observing her all the time. Compassion. She's very, very thoughtful, and I think I'd like try to internalize that. But the biggest thing is me and my mom is like we homies at the end of the day. Like there was a time where we was bumping heads or whatever, but like we just kind of realized it's just me and her. And so we was ended up having like real conversations the more as the older I got. And she always said I was like a little adult anyway, so it was kind of like nothing. So I think when it came to my approach to like talking to other women in my life, it was almost like the same kind of thing, because I know it's the same amount of empathy, the same amount of compassion, the same amount of like just support, you know what I mean? And really, so I try to just make sure that I'm hearing them, just as my mother would like hear me, you know what I mean? So just try to treat people the way I want to be treated, basically. So
It's really good.
so
When I think, me personally, when I think of men and women, I think of them as two pieces in a two-piece puzzle.
Yeah.
I think we complete each other. And when I think about the value of women, I think of them as what we're not. And without them, we can't be complete. And just going through the progression of life, me personally, when I think of women, a woman, I think of her as taking me to the next stage of growth in terms of building a family, having generations after me, I don't know if that makes sense in terms of like the value, but that's kind of how I think of it.
Um, yeah, I feel like my views are the lens in which I see life and pretty much everything is through my faith. And so it's hard for me to talk, I think, objectively about women without it coming through there. But I think when I look at it, I believe that God created men and women, and in doing so, as artists, we're all creators here. We can't but create from who we are. And so you see, God is not man or woman, but man and woman are both within God. And I think there's this, it's not a separation necessarily that happened when God created man and woman. It's not that he, it's not that he necessarily separated, but he did say it's not good that man should be alone. And so the role and the value and beauty I see in women specifically is within the harmony and unity that happens when men and women are able to move in within harmony. I think like there's a certain grace that women carry that is foreign to men in a way. It says in Proverbs, the glory of young men is their strength. And I think men, it's not that women, it's not that women aren't strong, and it's not that men aren't graceful, but I think like there's a special beauty that happens, and it it comes together really well. Where I don't think neither is greater or lesser, but I think there's you can learn more about God and more about life, and understand more within the context of women. Like it's like the world would be incomplete if it was just one or the other.
Yeah, so it seems like for all of us, um, women seem to have a special, particular value in our lives that is outside what we our concept of a man, and I think that that's very affirming for a lot of women to know that they are special, that they are seen in a high regard among men. Because society can say something completely different about women. Me personally, I think my views are similar to like everyone's. My mom is like a hero in my eyes. What she's like provided for me in my life and my upbringing as a single mom is like a treasure to me. It's gold. Um, Additionally, my female friends and counterparts have also offered that grace that Eric is talking about, that has informed me on how to like navigate the world in a very soft, tender, and mindful way that the men in my life haven't exactly offered those same lessons. I only got those lessons from the women around me.
Example of like one of those lessons, or essentially one of the ways of moving that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that a most recent lesson is like looking at people. I think before, like for myself personally, I look at the world in a very rigid way, like in a very black and white way, and it can be very like critical, judgmental almost. And through the conversations I've had with certain women, I've learned how to be more malleable and more considerate of like where people are at. Look at people in a more human lens rather than a more in a very like A or B type way, you
That's
know.
great.
And I think that the men in my life have really shown me that, like, just shown me how to look at the world in a binary way, as in like this equals that, which I think is practical and useful in some instances.
For me, they've been healthy, and they've also been pretty janky from time to time, in the sense of I'm very big on the companionship aspect of relationships, because I believe that like a friendship is really what will like is the foundation of anything, I believe anyway. And I found that like I'll get connected to a girl, and I would be very kind of shy about saying how I feel at times, especially when I was younger. And I was never giving any clear signals on, where I wanted, what the intention was. But like, really was no intention, like based energy be given, you know what I'm saying? So like, so by the time I would say, hey, I like you, they'd be like, I didn't know that, or why didn't you say anything? And it's kind of like the whole too late thing or whatever. And I would get so fixated on the connection of the friendship. And even though they're not even mentally there at all, like that's it's been polarized basically. But and then that would lead to a lot of miscommunication, and then eventually those friendships would get ruined or whatever, or not really ruined. Really, they would just they'd be hurt for a little bit. You know what I mean? So I had to work on myself in that aspect of just being more intentful about whenever I'm approaching someone, and therefore, but outside of that, I've always had great relationship with women. Most of my closest friends are women. Yeah, I'm always bigging them up or whatever, or like just having conversation, just being there for them, whatever. I just got to try to find a balance between like putting boundaries in terms of just like, if I like you, I got to say something. And if not, then I gotta be like, okay, you can't talk to me from 9 to 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're not a thing. You know what I mean? That's just too much energy being given, and it hurts me at the end of the day. So, and it's not doing you a good. I'm pretty sure it's not doing her a good service either. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with myself, it's been, I think when it comes to like, when you think about the idea of being intentional, that's completely contingent upon your intentions, which sounds funny, but I think if we were to follow that question, a lot of it's like, do you plan on marrying this person or not? Or it's like, do you see a future with this person or not? And I think I said this earlier, but I've actually landed at a place where I'm very confident that I will be celibate, which is just a whole nother conversation. But I think it's really, I think what I've been thinking and really searching my heart and like thinking through life, I've realized that a lot of healing happens within a space of intimacy. You need trust, you need closeness in order to actually have depth. That's why small talk hurts so much and feels so like insubstantial, and like deep conversations are really beautiful. I've had challenges when it comes to, I think, emotional intimacy, of being close, but it not being necessarily like romantic. Not in terms of my thing, but I think in terms of like confusion happening. But I think there are other intentions that are not just, I want to marry, because I think what's interesting about this is the idea of like, cool, marry or not, it's still intentions like, this is what I'm trying to take, or this is what I want. I could see you as my wife, or it's like, I don't see myself taking you as a wife. But what if like you just know that someone's life can be better because you're in it, or if you're trying to like help them work through this, or you just enjoy who they are and are wanting to like, because I think there's this idea of like, oh cool, we're just friends. We're like, friends are like here. It's like we as a society don't have a very big regard for friendship, but I think there's a lot of beauty and potential within friendship that is dependent on, I think, what is in other people's hearts. And I've had some really beautiful and nourishing relationships with women that are not romantic but are very intimate in terms of closeness, where but I think that even with what you were saying, Jamal, it's like, yeah, we're not staying up till like from 9 to 4 a.m., but it's just actually because the intention's not for it to lead to that. So it doesn't mean we're not close. It's just like the nature of it changes. So it's healthy, but it's still actually really nourishing. So it's been like this interesting mix that I haven't really seen. I didn't see modeled, but I found to be true when intentions are highly communicated, and I've been able to be like very, very transparent.
I actually want to ask Eric, because you brought it up twice. Could you clarify what you mean by you choosing celibacy? Because that's not very common.
For sure. So it is like related, I think, to faith. I've read the scriptures, and there's this passage where it says, talks about this woman. It's like she marries, and she marries a guy with 7 brothers, and then he dies. She marries the other brother out of obligation, and then he dies, and basically she marries all the brothers, and they're like, Jesus, in heaven, whose wife is she? And he's like, oh well, no, actually, in heaven, you're with me. It's not, marriage is not something that is going to be there. We're not going to be married in heaven. And I think understanding that is like, a life is not a short thing, but I found in being close I could only see I realized that what I was opening my heart when I was allowing women into this space of like marriage was actually something that only God could satisfy. I was like, had this insatiable, like, oh, well, if we're going to commit, if we're doing this, and this is going to have to change. It wasn't even anything huge, but it was just expectations. And I realized like, people grow where they're loved and they grow where they're accepted, which sounds funny, but it's like, if you want someone to change, you actually just need to accept them, which is like, well, that doesn't make sense. But in reality, it's like when you really become critical, people close up and then they're not able to grow. And so I realized like, I'm a much healthier person when my desires are actually only for God. And so I realized like, so I, I was in a relationship for 2 years that ended this past January, and she left me towards the end. We were kind of in challenging places, but I realized I still loved her. And when it ended, I was like heartbroken, but I was also like so full of joy because I realized I still loved her, but my love could actually still let her go. And I realized like, which was crazy because I was like happy for her to be able to like be her own person if she didn't want to, because I was like hurting, but then I was also like, you know what, you shouldn't be with someone who you don't want to be with. And so I just surrendered something, and in my pain, I think that is when like I surrendered that place, and I thought I was giving up relationships with women in general. I was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna be on the outside. But in reality, all my relationships have been so much healthier because I've actually been able to get closer, safer, because I'm not looking to fill anything from another person. And so it's actually just been interesting because I think like one of the challenges is like we can actually use women to nurse our wounds, or it's like in intimacy we open up a part that's like this trauma, and then they're now introduced into this place. It's actually not healthy. And so in bringing those things that are not stable, I bring those to God, and then my relationships with women have been a lot stronger, and I've been able to stand like in deep places, but stand firm and stand strong. And I think like women deserve stability. They deserve like our consistency to where we're not, moving with the wind. And I realized if I was tying my desire to the relationship, there's no way I could be stable. Because I'm like, how you can't do that? Like, if you do that affects me. Like, you can't just. And so with that, I was like, the only way I can create a safe space is actually if. And there's so much more to that, but that's essentially like, I guess.
Wow.
That's
That
very.
is profound, bro.
Yeah.
I think we all resonate with that because I think that in our deepest hearts as men, we know that we're supposed to offer that stability to women.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be sacrificial. It's supposed to be a love that reflects an unconditional love, right? Like a divine and godly love, like you mentioned. That's what it's supposed to be. And in a romantic relationship, because it's so raw and intimate and beautiful, it's almost like fire. Like it could be it could be healing. It could provide light, warmth, or it could destroy. And oftentimes it's interesting how when we get into those spaces, we can step away from God, or we can kind of close the blinds on God, and kind of like keep him out of the situation.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful knowing that like you yourself understand that and you've made a decision to navigate it in the way that makes sense to you and feels right to you. That takes a lot of growth and understanding of yourself, discipline.
Yeah. Serious transfer.
I would definitely consider my relationships with women to be healthy. Like Jamal said, I've always had like female friends, probably too many actually, to be honest.
I feel that.
To the amount, to the fact that like my future spouse probably would be uncomfortable, and that's something I definitely want to change. But yeah, I'm gonna be that guy to be like, oh yeah, I've got black friends, but yeah, I've got I have many female friends. My relationship with them, I would say, has always been great. Romantically, I wouldn't say I have any issues. I'm currently single, so I don't know if that speaks to that. But yeah, I would say I don't have any issues with women. I think when men have issues with women, I think it stems from, it's more of a psychological thing, and in regards to like power dynamics, you wanting to have some kind of power over someone else. Not
Yeah, I mean, on my end, I'd say my relationships are pretty healthy as well. Cool. I think that the big thing though, for me, and I think it's is in all relationships is a lot of it is the work that I have to do on myself personally. You know, I've had experiences in the past where um, my relationship, I wouldn't say they were super unhealthy. There was a lot of value in the relationships, but a lot of the misunderstandings and miscommunications and yeah, a lot of that just stemmed from me personally not being as comfortable with expressing myself or communicating, or I think Jamal, you shared that as well. Just yeah, just being transparent, and so, and also for me personally, just thinking about, I think a lot in college too. Like, all right, what are my boys going to think about this? That would often come up and influence my actions. And yeah, so now that I am where I'm at now, I think the biggest thing that I realize in any relationship is like it starts with the work that I do on myself, and through that, then I'm able to be a better listener, be a better partner, be more compassionate, be more understanding.
I would say currently, yeah, my relationships with women are pretty healthy, and I think that was a lot of like there's a lot of work that's been done. Like it hasn't always been that way. I think particularly with um, my romantic relationships. I think just when I was, younger, growing up in certain environments that push you to, the biggest thing was to not express yourself and not feel like I had the power or agency to. Um, and in my romantic relationships, I've had many conversations. I'm thinking about one relationship in particular where my ex girlfriend was like, like, why don't you like tell me certain things? Why don't you express these things? And I'm just like, yo, I don't know how. Like, and I guess I've always seen it. I just didn't really work I didn't work on that right until it like it emerged in my relationships, and then I realized how it affected them. And I think I spent many years working on how working on being more expressive and feeling that it's okay to express emotions and feelings, and like I grew up where that wasn't the case. That meant you were weak, or that meant you were this or that, and it was ingrained into my psyche that like I shouldn't do that, boys shouldn't do that, right? So there was this psychological conditioning of like what I or what like my world and my society was telling me that a boy or a man should or should not do. And
100%.
emote is one of those things. And then once I realized, like I think Kyle might have mentioned it, but like, I realized there was a lot that I had to work on, right? So like some of my traumas were affecting my relationships, and like I wanted to grow personally, right? And so like those were areas that I focused on, like how do I express myself? And that came largely through my art, and then just having a lot of women friends that also like emerged through that, like
Yeah, to answer the question myself, they haven't always been healthy. I think by default, they've been, perhaps not the healthiest, maybe neutral to unhealthy. And I think it's also because I brought in my own traumas connected to like my childhood. And it really comes down to your deepest understanding of love. This is what I found for myself. Like your deepest understanding of love is informed by your youth, your childhood, and your first encounter with love outside of like God, right, is your parents. You know, um, and I think we shouldn't blame our parents for anything, but they're imperfect, right? So I think for me, it has been unhealthy because I looked at romantic relationships as sources of validation. And if I didn't receive that validation, things would break down. It'd be like what Eric expressed earlier, in that, like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Trying to control this person, which is unloving, right? So that can communicate to their deepest part. Why are you trying to control me? I want to be free, you know? Um, and yeah, I've personally been, I guess, the source of a lot of ruined relationships because of that. Um, what has manifested is insecurity again and again and again. Um, and I think that turning to God has helped me a lot. I'm able to put that need outside of someone and into um, like what I feel to be the ultimate source of that. However, it's still something that it's like a part of me, and I think that we all have our traumas, but you know, I also considered like not being in a relationship at all. Like I was like, it's not going to work out for me. Like I don't, it's just not for me. But then I realized, just reflecting on my family and my past, I want to be a good father. I want to be a good husband because I haven't seen that in my own lineage. Therefore, this is something that's like purposeful to me. It's like a part of what I want in my life. Um, so I've decided that as I move towards that, I'm going to intentionally heal on the way. And I think that the intention to heal has made it so that my relationships with women have become healthier. But I think that a common theme in what most of you expressed was the need to work on yourself before you engage with women.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about a lot of women express like the timeline, like by the age 30, by age 35, their eggs are like, something's happening with their eggs. It's real, bro. It's real. Like something's happening biologically in which they are less likely to have healthy children. A lot of women want children. A lot of people want children. So is this something you keep in mind? And I think the question is like, do you have an understanding of like what women seek in long-term relationship, and how they navigate them in terms of the timeline and such?
Can you just repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
Yeah. Do you have an understanding of what women seek in long-term relationship and how they navigate them?
Mm.
If that makes sense.
Sorry, well, I was in the chat. Sorry, one more time.
Yeah, my bad, y'all.
I think we were all.
Is that rambling?
Like,
Damn.
should we? What to do?
Yeah.
Put the question in the chat.
Yes, put the question. Yes.
So we won't forget.
Do you have an understanding how women navigate long-term relationship, what they seek?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think of it, I think oftentimes it's very similar to what we want in relationships. Mm-hmm. Like love and affection and someone we can trust and someone that's supportive. I just imagine it's a lot of what I desire is what it was similar to what they desire. I know you mentioned biologically, there's a certain point where it's a bit harder for them to have children. So that's definitely a factor. But I've actually, a friend of mine, she founded basically this company that focuses on women's health primarily. And she was basically actually saying like a lot of what we've been taught about how long women are fertile for is actually like not true. What some of the newer science is showing, that they actually are fertile for a bit longer than what we've been told in some of the earlier studies that happened like the 60s. So I think that age is actually a little later, but it's still a factor because it's not. I mean, firstly, it's not something that crossed my mind. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be as long as I can get it off, that I'm good, But so there's that element, but outside of that, I imagine that it's very similar to
I feel like we're all, yeah, I would agree with that, Kyle, that we're kind of all looking for the same things. We're all looking for a home, looking for a place where we feel seen, where we feel known. And I think that's where the desire is like, I mean, there's a statistic that said, and I think it was like the 1800s, the average, it's within Italians, but it kind of applies for everyone. Average Italian family was like 20. It was like in one household, 20. And then it was like 50 years later, it's like 10. And then nowadays it's like 4 or 5. And so we've become less communal as we've become, I think, especially in the West, as it's like, I want to get my own, I want to live alone, I'm going to do all these things. So when you leave community, you actually leave a space in which you're known deeply. And so there's that desire, that yearning to be known and to be seen. And we kind of only have that space when it comes to romantic relationships, it seems. It's like when we actually open ourselves up to be seen and to be known. So I think a lot of weight then goes like, if I don't find a partner, I'm not going to be known. Like I could die, it's like, well, if I don't get someone now, like, what if I die alone? What if I never get married? And then someone like, who's going to take care of me when I get older? And so I think there's a lot of fear that goes around it, that I think what we're looking for is security and assurance that we're.
Yeah, that's good. And I think the ways, like, I totally agree with that. And the ways that that's like achieved is by like communication and consistency. Like those have been two things that in my relationships that I've known, like that was really important, that we communicate and express ourselves, and then that like showing someone you care, it's, you can't do it one time, or you can't say it like I love you. Let's say, love, for example, you can't say, oh, I did this for you and that was me loving you, or I say I love you. Like it has to be
I think one thing that women seek in a long-term relationship is stability within the family and that man themselves. And that's definitely something that I want myself. And I think that's something that hinders me in regards to starting a relationship. Because I feel as though I'm focused on me, I'm focusing on my career. And when I do that, I tell myself I don't have time to date. I don't have time for these girls. And that ultimately negatively affects me and anyone that I may be interested in. I do understand that, like, if there's something that you want badly, you find time for that. And that's just something I know as a man I need to work on, is knowing that life is it's an ongoing process. You can't just be like, okay, I've got this position now. Now I can pursue this woman. It's a
Definitely team player. And that so I'm trying to get something right that my mom always says. She said, "You just trying to find someone to put your McDonald's checks together to be able to get together to keep things going. So you bring in what your share, I bring in my share. We good, that kind of thing." And because she would always tell me in regards to just anything, where she's like, "When you act crazy, I'm act crazy, bro. So as long as you just doing your part, bet." And I would find that that's just reoccurring with relationships and just life in general. I found that most of the things I have been able to do in my life, as long as I'm giving 110%, then the other person is going to be able to handle the rest or whatever. So I find that that's what oftentimes they look for. Yeah, pretty much everything everyone's been saying. It's always every conversation.
So it seems as if, the words is like steadfast, as Eric said. We use the scripture, Proverbs. What is desired in a man is steadfast love, Proverbs 19:22. And I agree with everyone here that, especially Kyle and Eric, that we all are really looking for the same things. We're all told different things, though. Like society tells a man something very specific about what they should attain in a woman, and women are told something very specific as well. And that influence leads into our encounters, which can lead into healthy or unhealthy encounters. It can extend into a lifetime, that influence. Breaking out of that is know it's a very serious thing, and it's like not very easy or simple, you know, to break out of that pattern.
Could I bring
Um,
up a thought?
yeah.
I think one of the things that's been challenging, I guess I'm not saying this like, in women, in the basically all we're looking for is something that's steadfast. I think like one of the challenges I've come up against is like when beginning to date, it's like, okay, cool, we're either gonna get married or we're gonna like break apart, which actually makes it really, really hard. That fork just makes it really, really hard to actually have anything be consistent. And I think what I found in my relationships where I've dated, it's sad because those people aren't even in my life anymore. Like I've loved them deeply, but I've lost them completely in a way that it's interesting because I think in our efforts to achieve something that's steadfast, it actually risks all. It's like, I don't want to lose you as a friend. That thought that's like, cool, if I start this, I might lose you as a friend. Where it's like, it's kind of tough to split that difference, which that's been something I've kind of struggled to navigate. Like it's just interesting to me that we can all agree like what we want is something that's stable, steadfast, but like how rarely that is actually what's possible. I think when we step out to pursue something strong.
It's definitely an abundance mindset that has to be applied when it comes to doing that. It's such a double-edged sword, right? Because like you said, it's going to lead to something, or not at all. You lose it entirely.
You lose all of. Mm-hmm.
But it's the energy behind it, though. You know what I mean? Like with. Oh, good. Sorry.
No, go. Keep going.
No, yeah, it's just energy is never lost nor destroyed; it's transferred. So, and oftentimes like we're just vessels at the end of the day, right? So God is like operating within these vessels, right? So like if I'm focused, if I try to keep that in mind while I'm going through this experience, this very human experience, I remember that this particular person might be not available, like they're not a thing, they're not with me anymore or whatever, but that's not to say that that same energy, that same feeling is not going to come back. It's just not, it's almost like you have to be not so caught up on the physical aspect of things as much. And that's really where the hangups come. That's what back in the day when I was younger, I would get so caught up on, but she's so dope and and I would just so totally settle for the idea that, it's like, yeah, she likes the attention that you're giving her, even though she's already told you that, she don't like you like that or whatever, or like she's implied that by saying, I'm not sure. But it's like, I kept, the energy going by saying like, oh no, well, I'll just stick around or whatever. Maybe she might come around or whatever. And it was indicative of my own self-esteem of how I saw myself. Cause it's almost like I didn't think anything better would come after that, basically. You know what I mean? And as opposed to looking at the core of it where it's like, nah, it's out here. It's in abundance. You know what I mean? The form is still there. The energy is still there. It's just going to be a different form. You just weren't, I wasn't right. I was wrong about that person, but the feeling I had, it's going to come back. So at least that's how I'm trying to apply when it comes to this kind of stuff. Cause it's a doozy, right? So, yeah.
No, I resonate with a lot of what Jamal shared, because I think the way I think about relationships in general is that they aren't necessarily all supposed to be forever. I think there's a lot of value that we can get in and sort of, one thought that I've been reflecting on a lot recently, especially with people like Kobe passing, and I had thought when Pop Smoke passed, I did shrooms, and I was thinking a little bit about this, but the idea that like we often see the value of something by how long it lasts, when in reality, I love what Jamal was saying, vessel, like reality, what actually is all we have, and what actually it is the actual moments that we have, so almost like seeing it like vertical rather than horizontal, like, all right, this moment that we have, like this is it, like this is life, this, and through that thought of us being like, I love saying, Jamal said vessel, but I love saying like spirits, like we're just spirits, so it's like Kobe isn't here, but his spirit lives on, like I feel Kobe still, you know what I mean, et cetera, with other people that we may have lost in our lives, whether it's because friendships change or you broke up, they they still impacted us, and we still impacted them. And so, you know, another thought that I have is like, I'm really just a reflection of everyone I've came in contact with. You know, that's who I am. You know, or everything I've read, et cetera, et cetera. All those things. There's really just me, and so inevitably that person is you've internalized that person. You know, when you spend time with them, and so yeah, that's sort of my thing. Is like it's not all or nothing. It's like there can be a ton of value in the relationship, even if it.
Yeah, truly. What came to mind as you were talking, Kyle, is I read this book that spoke about a woman's existence in the world and how women have a very intimate relationship with time. Um, you know, this is a perhaps biological thing, you know, as well as like a spiritual thing in which like women are deeply present. You know, and I think that as maybe you expressed it earlier, there's something that women bring to our lives, like no, Shola, in that like we're kind of like, you know, the missing puzzle pieces for one another. I think that being that in that presence, like being present, we can learn how to appreciate like the moment as you expressed, you know. And I think that what we may offer in terms of having like a vision, a direction, kind of comes into that like that feeling of being present perfectly, you know. And I think that like when we come together with women, us being appreciative of that and offering our vision is something that can come together that can really like be like a powerful factor in the world, you know, if that makes sense. It got kind of abstract, but
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the way the superior man, they talk about that in the book. They talk about that.
Yeah, I think I like to think about men and women as like two very purposeful entities that have been created for very purposeful reasons that should come together in a productive way. And I think we're all trying to figure out what that productive way looks like. You know, it's definitely not entirely physical. It's not entirely emotional. It's not entirely spiritual. I think it all kind of comes together as a collective thing, you know?
When you imagine that, is that strictly like romantic?
No, I think it's not exclusively romantic. I think romantic relationship really equates to like the creating of life. I think that's it. And I don't think that has that trumps any other type of encounter we may have with women. You can create an artwork that can have an impact in the same way that a person could have impact. You know, like creation doesn't have to necessarily be like life, you know, but I think that it is a deep part of us, creation. And it's, I like to believe that all parts of us are parts of us that are healthy and whole and need to exist, but they need to exist in the right way. I'm going to ask one more question from myself, and then we're going to go into the questions that women submitted.
I'm excited for those.
Yeah, I know you are.
I'm like,
I don't.
Go ahead.
Because mine are kind of boring, I'll be honest. But
no, you're asking
those
great
are
questions.
actually,
These are really good.
Yeah, for real.
I have possibly one suggestion.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm probably gonna have to jump off in probably 15.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for some of these questions, not all of us have to answer them, so that we can get through.
For sure.
2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm with you because I owe myself some time outside. So
Yeah,
before the sun go down.
I got you. I'll try to speed it up. It's my first time hosting, so thank you all for you.
You're doing great.
Oh, you're good. You're doing great.
Great job, dude.
Thanks. All right, last one. Do you feel a certain pressure from women to be romantic, to enter a romantic context?
I wouldn't say there's a pressure. I think sometimes, like for like some of my friendships, we've obviously like had some type of like attraction towards each other, and that's developed. And it wasn't a pressure of like we need to be romantic, but it was like the question was like we both acknowledge that this is here, whether that's both or one person. What do we do from there? Right? Do we pursue something more? Do we, have a conversation and say like, look, I want to progress, or I don't, or I think we're better as friends. So for me, it sometimes comes out that way rather than like, I'm all still thinking. Like, I want to tell y'all this story.
Oh man, nah. I mean, I'll say this real quick. I just know I went on a date recently, and it went from being like, oh yeah, we're feeling each other, and then it was just done, just like that. Now, granted, there's some circumstances behind that in terms of just I met her at a club, I was drunk, she was drunk, and made out, whatever, and went on a date after that. And I think I do believe that I was a little too geeked off of the conversations that we were having. So there was really no, I wasn't really giving off a ton of romantic vibes, you know what I'm saying? Like with intention in regard. But for me, that's generally how I show. I'm like, oh no, I'm connecting with you now. But she probably had a different standard of what that was in that context, right? So, so it kind of fell off. So I don't know if that relates to the question or not. That's why I was like pondering, like, So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Word.
I'm gonna be pretty, transparent. I'm sure you guys all sound like this should make sense, but I've actually thought a lot about what does it mean for something to be romantic. I looked at the definition in the past. I'm paraphrasing, but it's essentially relating to the expression of love. And I don't know about you guys, but I've had moments in my life where like I've like entered a conversation and I had no idea what was about to happen, but I feel like our souls touched, or it was like we just connected on such a like thoroughly deep level that it's like, okay, I've definitely been deeply impacted by this moment. Do I let this person know that this has touched me a lot and that I really, really value them? Or do I just pretend like, I'm cool and just keep going? And in a lot of situations, I've actually expressed it, which is like, it's quite intimate, it's quite deep, and it's really weighty. But I think it's like, I've made sure I've just been like really rooted in saying so. But I would say the nature of it almost does seem romantic. There are certain people who have like an appreciation for life, just such a beautiful, they're just such beautiful people where you see them and you're just like, you're so beautiful. And it's beyond sexual, it's beyond physical. It's like this aura or essence. It's like, I deeply appreciate all of my time with you. It's like, it's not like casual. It's like, cool, it's just a coffee. It's like, no, I would love to have dinner with you. But it doesn't have to necessarily be on the course of like, I want to pursue you and me as this way. So I've actually had a lot of interactions and moments that are in nature romantic, and I've had to at times create clarity. But I've also met people. I mean, and this hasn't happened. This has been across age groups. So it's been some people that are much older than me, some people that are like a little bit younger. Like it's not. It's different in nature. It's more on a soul level. But I would say that it is a bit romantic.
What does romance mean to you?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go define romantic. Conducive or characterized by the expression of love. And so, I'm like, well, if you feel something and you know that the root of it is right, why would you not express it? If we all deeply desire to be loved, if we all deeply are looking to be seen, I'm like, you know what? If I find in my heart that I have a deep love for you, I'm going to let you know, because I know that it's going to be nourishing. I know that it's going to help you. But I also am just going to be very, very clear about, hey, well, this is where I'm not trying to, it's not that it's not I don't want you. It's like, no, I actually want, it comes down to that thing with stability, where it's like you enter into that course where we're either going to be together or we're going to be completely apart. It's like, no, I don't want even that to be an option. I want to find a place where I can be forever. So it's like from the start, put me in a place where I can be there forever. And I think it's more so about connecting with the heart of someone and seeing all that they're becoming, but also seeing that where they're at now and leaving space for them to grow. Because I think what I found in myself was like, I want to create space for people to grow into who they're becoming. I want to love people into the future, not to just need them to fit into where I need them to be at the moment. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's been interesting because I was like, cool, I'm not looking for that. But what that did is actually upgrade all of my relationships to be a lot more intimate in nature, to appear a bit more romantic. But honestly, like, if romantic is just the correlation of the expression of love, the whole world, like, you know.
I think that the things you're mentioning are timeless. Like truth is timeless, love is timeless, and it has an eternal impact on people. I've grown to understand that you can never regret honestly and earnestly loving someone.
Yeah.
Like it heals you in ways that you may not see in the moment, but it will heal you, and it also is nourishing and healing to that person. So there's no deficit there. If you've loved someone fully, even if they leave you, they leave you better. Like they leave you healed, and you also have that as well. It's a reflection.
Yeah, it says it's better to give than to receive. And if you really take that, it's like, oh, well, actually, a lot of our discomfort, our angst is that, if you take water, water is naturally meant to move, and love waters. It nurtures, it grows. So if water is naturally meant to move, if it becomes impeded, you think like, oh, well, it's crazy. A river like travels miles, but you can draw from it. It's like crystal clear. But then stop water and it turns into a swamp. And I think love is in the same way, where love is only ever meant to flow. We have hearts, we have this yearning to love. And if we impede that, it turns toxic. And so I think in that way, it truly is better to give than to receive. And so like an orientation I've found is like, okay, I'm just going to keep my heart in the right place. I'm going to love people to however much space they have for my love. Because you also don't want to, there's no love that's not sensitive to context. One thing that's loving to one person is not loving to the other person. And so in that way, like I've chosen my orientation that I'm going to love in whatever space they have. And by being stable, it's given space for women to see like, oh, okay, oh no, okay, so it's not that. Like, I mean, it's like, what is this? I have no idea what's going on. Like, I've never, like, they've been like floored in ways that just like, I don't know how to reconcile this. But sure enough, like after months pass, I'm in the exact same place. So like, oh, okay. Huh. Okay, I can trust. Oh, this is amazing. Where they're not realizing like it's not, even the language is like, oh, fall in love. It's like, if you fall, you're probably going to get hurt. We can learn how to stand in love, to walk in love, to build with.
Hey, when you please invite me to your TED Talk.
Right?
Man, that's just a lot of knowledge, and it felt poetic, but like just dope, like just inspiring. Bro. Like appreciate that.
Yeah. That is wisdom. Beautifully said, bro.
I just heard someone say that the other day about love, following the concept of falling in love, and how we got it backwards, where it's an upward thing more so than anything else. Like, yeah, I just heard someone say that. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've had similar encounters, Eric, in terms of like knowing that I'm not meant to evolve a love or to transfer a love to a partnership context, but I'm there to just give love. And just seeing the effect it has on certain people, the unexpected element about it, is really interesting. I didn't make the decision you made in terms of being celibate. So I think that at a point it became kind of confusing to people because I didn't have the vocabulary. Just like this is where I'm at and this is what I choose. So it got confusing for people because they're just like, you're here offering love, but as a man, you're supposed to bring it to the next step. And I think just hearing from you and just where you're at, it gives me like better perspective on what has happened in the past for me.
Yeah, because I think the question's like, is it going to leave? Like, I don't want to depend on something or grow comfortable with something that's going to be gone without my control. It's like what we said, is like we're looking for stability. That's all we're looking for. And if we can't be in a place that we can be forever, how can it be healthy? You're building a house on like a beach. You're like, build a house on the sand. It's like a storm's going to come and it's going to get moved. Like you can keep building, like, okay, looks like we got to the first windows. All right, putting on the roof, but like you're only one storm away. And so it's like, you can't be healthy even if you stay in the house.
All right. This first question, from a woman, it says, it's said that women typically marry men that remind them of their fathers. Is it true? Is it true for men as well? Do they marry women that remind them of their mothers?
I think it depends on the relationship you have with your mom. But But I imagine that, I mean, sort of like what you said earlier, and this is something I've been covering as well, is like so much of the way we relate to other people and is dependent on a lot of things that happen in our childhood that we may not even remember or be fully aware of. And so I imagine that there's definitely a huge influence on the way I was mothered, that impacts my relationships with women.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes the most sense. If it's been a positive and loving encounter with your mother, then you want to find that because that's your example. But if you haven't, then you're looking for something healthier, you know?
But the thing is, you might have to uncover some of that trauma to be able to like
See
get to
it.
that
You
point.
have to understand what is healthier. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But for me, the beautiful aspects of my mom is something that I do look for her patience, understanding, and her honesty. I look for that. Um, the next question is kind of complex, but I'm not sure how it relates entirely. But it says, is learning to accept yourself beyond the white male gaze important to you, to your success, or are you complacent?
Mm.
Drop that in the chat.
Yeah, right.
Put in the
Like
chat.
gays. What
That one.
does that mean?
I think I know what it is. This is actually very pertinent for Black women. Um, learning to accept yourself
Like,
beyond the white male gaze.
I think I get it, because in the sense of saying like you're constantly comparing yourself to how they move as opposed to how you should be naturally moving, kind of thing. Like their standard of what it means to be. Like, what is that what like something like that?
Yeah, they're standards. So like, for instance, like Black women believe that Black men choose white women because of their proximity to whiteness and what that represents. If you have a white woman, you're deemed as more successful, um, wealthier, because Black women are perceived to be the bottom of the totem pole. So if they're next to you, then that reflects yourself as well. That may extend into colorism as well. Yeah.
I mean, for me, let me see. I grew up with like, I remember when I was younger, my mom used to talk so much shit about like white people. And I remember I would be very like, Mom, don't do that. Like they're people, you know what I'm saying? And she'd be like, listen, bro, all I'm saying, just beware of this and a third. And, so it was only until I remember I went to middle school and that was when I first dealt with racism and just all matters of wild stuff being said to me. Like, hey, Dad, Jamal, does your dad live with you? No. Oh, how come every Black person I know dad doesn't live with them? You know what I'm saying? Little goofy stuff like that. So so as I've put it, I've dealt with, I understand, I understand crackers and I understand niggas as well. So it's like, cause I didn't feel like I fell in with either one of them and I didn't want to. Cause like one of the things she also instilled in me was that like, I grew up around like the Nation of Islam basically. Right. So I'm hearing all matters of that at an early age. And a lot of the philosophies that they have and things of that nature, with like the children of Israel and all that, on a biblical sense, and then in the Quran as well. So that instilled in me that like I don't necessarily have to prove myself to none of them. You know what I'm saying? I can. It's not about that. You know what I'm saying? Like I can still study and learn from them without never taking how they move as a indicative of like how I should be moving in that regards, right? So like, in other words, anybody sweating them, I'm I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good place to be in. I personally, I think I'm in a process of learning how I want to show up as a Black man, in knowing that our people have been discriminated against and subjugated to this day. It's a problem, right? And we want to solve this problem. So how do I align my actions to solve this problem in all ways? I've reflected on like Black men and Black women, and we have a lot of trauma between us. I perceive that to be intentional, when black folks got to America, they divided families. You know, the collective black unit is detrimental to the mission of racism. Um, I think that's why Africa is disjointed, because if Africa united, then it wouldn't be able to be exploited the way it is, you know. But if you keep it separate, you can exploit it all you want. So I think that for me, I think that the example of Black love is effective, it's useful, and I've aligned myself with that. You know, and it's easier because like my mom is Black and I grew up in a Black community, so like my associations with love have been Black people, so it's easy for me. If I grew up in among white people, my associations of love would reflect white people. um but yeah, I've kind of made the decision to commit myself to a Black woman, because I've also thought that like every single race of women can look upon themselves and receive love. Like if a Japanese woman does not receive love outside of Japanese people, they can just turn to Japan and like, or turn to Japanese culture and receive that love. Black women are the only group in which, when they look upon themselves, they're unsure of whether they will be loved. You know, they can look out in the world and people can say, "No, I don't love you," but when they look upon themselves or their own community, they're not sure if they're going to receive love. And I think that as Black men, no matter how it looks like, we have a responsibility. Black people, really, we have a responsibility to change that.
Yeah, I would just caution us not to use I forget the term, but like saying like that's not obsolete. Damn, what I'm trying to say. Make generalization or making like you saying like Black women are the only women. Like it's not all Black women, right? So being conscious um, of that use, you know, just because it's not all Black women, right? But I do get what you're saying. I have to jump off, so I would just share my last thoughts about this idea of success. I think like just my metrics of success was never like in relation to whiteness at all. So like for me, like not at all. Like you know, but it was great talking to y'all. Man, meeting everyone, seeing you, Jamal again. Daniel, appreciate this, man. Like for real,
Thank
like
you, bro.
this is dope. You know, I can't wait to like hear everyone else's thoughts. I'm actually jumping off. My girl and I are about to FaceTime and cook. So
Aw.
Uh,
Bro.
look, you still got to make it work. Do this, you know.
mhm.
Peace,
But,
brother.
yeah.
Appreciate you.
Okay, have a good one.
You too,
You
bro. Be
too.
blessed.
All right, all right.
Cool.
I've got a bit more time, and I'm just interested to hear all the girls' questions. But I guess if
Facts.
people have to get off, maybe if people have to, they can. But I want to hear these questions.
I personally don't adhere to identity politics. When I mean, like, I've dated Black women, I've dated white women. It doesn't matter to me. Um, I yeah, I yeah, like what Tarek said. I don't compare myself to a white man. Um, I don't like using that phrase, the white man. Yeah. Like I feel like we're all
I feel
equal.
you.
There's nothing that they can do that I can't do. Yeah, that's just that's my take on it. Yeah. So like my success is my success. Um, you know, I mean, if some people look up to white men and think they're successful, what is the reason for that? Maybe there's a corner of truth to it. Is it the money that they have? I don't know. Is it what could it be? We don't know. Um, it could just be society and how we define success for each other, and that could just be a Western thing, or it could not be. But for me, I have my bar for what success is, and that's independent of being Black or white.
I mean, my thoughts. I've personally had to do a fair amount of unlearning. You know, just in general, I've
Talk about it.
internalized, yeah, what it means to be black, and it's always meant like less than, you know, from what I saw in music videos, what I read, what I saw, you know. I think now we're having a movement where like, all right, you see a superhero and they can be black, you know, or you see a hip hop video and they could be the man, the you know, main character isn't necessarily going to jail, you know, and et cetera. But you know, I've had that dynamic of, you know, I grew up in, you know, mostly black and Hispanic neighborhood, mostly black neighborhood, and then when I went to high school, I went to like a majority white high school, and that was like it was like a culture shock to me, but it also was just like the way we were perceived. You know, I had grown up with people calling me like gifted or being like gifted in talented programs, etc. You know, and I go to this private school and like all these kids, like even the kids that are goofing off, they're just expected to go to college. They're expected to, you know, it's just like it's normal for them. You know what I mean? They aren't gifted. They're just like, you know, kids that, you know, happen to have educated parents that also have money. You know what I mean? And I go back to my neighborhood and I'm like, all right, there's so many of these kids that could also have the same level of expectations that all the kids at my school do, but for some reason they don't, you know, and they aren't told that they're capable, you know, of doing this and that, you know. And so there was a lot of that I had to unlearn. I even remember like going to some of these kids' apartments and almost not wanting to be a threat, you know, like when I would walk, because I would see the way people would look at me, you know, or if I was like waiting on their balcony, I would see the way people would look at me. And a lot of it was you know, myself as well, and being self-conscious about that. And it honestly took until like a lot of these like shootings that went super viral for me to be like, oh no, like I'm just going to take up space. You know, that's been like one of my biggest reflections, like over the last like 4 years, like, no, I'm going to take up space. You know, if I'm standing on the balcony and you scared, that's on you. Like, that's not my fault. You know what I mean? Because I see the way, you know, I have a decent amount of friends that are white, and I see the way that they move, you know, and you know, they don't have to think about race, you know. And so I'm like, all right, well, it's not my job to think about race or to make someone else feel safe. And so that's been a big point of
All right, next question. Is there a reason why some men want to lead, quote unquote, also while simultaneously wanting the women to be responsible for everything?
It makes me think about being raised by like, because everyone in the panel here, right, is raised by like their mothers, right? Like there's like single moms, right? Am I bugging?
No, my dad was around too.
Okay, okay. But you see the level of it's so 9 out of 10 times kind of thing. But it's weird how it can have an effect. Like I was reading the book the Way of the Superior Man, and it was talking about how there's this thing where, like, you know, a guy might be more have more feminine energy, or like, you know, more masculine energy. All these energies are in us, right? But sometimes we might lean a little more on one than the other, right? So a guy might be more sensitive or whatever, or a guy might be more macho, quote unquote, or whatever. And I was reflecting on that because I've been hearing people throw those terms around for like since people heard about it 5 years ago, and I was like seeing how that reflected with me. And that made me realize, like, there is a level of influence that my mother has had on me, as well as my grandmother and all other women that I grew up around. And I had male figures in my life, like my uncles and whatnot. I wasn't able to connect with them as much because either they ended up moving out and I didn't get to see them as much. Never met them until way later, or they tried to be as fatherly to me the best way that they could, which was trying to toughen me up, but that wasn't how I operated. So oftentimes I get tight with him, then then he would get mad at me and try to fight me, and then mom's like, all right, bro, I got to invite you outside now. So it's like, but I found that there's an effect where it's like I'm a little more, I don't know if I'm a little more empathetic, because I know with women in general, they're just insanely empathetic. And I know that stems from my mother being that way, and then also being around other women. So I don't know if I'm deviating from the question or not, but I do think there is. So then it becomes the force of like leading. I'm used to my mom leading. They're just 100 when I was younger, anyway, right? I've had to learn that. Ooh, you gotta lead, bro. So hence the whole intention when it came to dating. When it comes to dating, it's like, oh, I got to set up the whole day and all that, and I had to like embrace that because that was such a foreign concept to me growing up younger. When I was younger, and now I realize like, oh, that's probably why she lost interest because you didn't set up nothing. So you got to lead, bro. And it's such a when I was younger, it just wasn't what I was used to because my mother was always leading. So hence the the feminine energy and the masculine and all that. So yeah,
And that can be taught to us biblically. So I'd like to ask Eric, do you think that that is a biblical context for the man to lead in a relationship? What does that look like?
Could you restate the question one more time? I think I know it, but I just want to.
The original question or the one that I just asked?
No, the original question. Are you asking me to respond to Jamal's response or the question?
Actually, yeah, the question. So the question is there a reason why some men want to lead while also simultaneously wanting the woman to be responsible for everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think this question is birthed from a situation and circumstance that is far too common, but is never supposed to be the case. Where, like, honestly, like leadership, if we're looking at the Bible, Jesus says the first shall be last. He said, "No, look at me. I'm the king, and watch what I'm doing. I'm serving you." And so, what it means to lead, there's this idea of servant leadership. What it means to lead is actually to serve. And so, the question doesn't actually work because you can't want to lead and then for all responsibility to be on the other person. The question's kind of like a dead end on both sides, or you can't really follow it. But what I'm saying is like it's birthed from a place of like they want a title, or they want man of the house, but they don't want any form of like they want to be like a puppet king, who's like has all the image but doesn't actually run the kingdom. And I think in that regard, I guess to speak to the heart of what I sense the question to be is, there are so few models of strong leadership. I've heard leadership is one of the scarcest resources in the world. So many people, especially nowadays, are like CEO, Instagram bio, but like it's so rare that we actually see great leaders. And if we do, they're within context like where we don't have access to really understand them. And so I think we have perhaps perverted or manipulated ideas of what it means to lead, just because we haven't really learned. And it's funny because I mean, there's endless reasons. Like school, how important is physics right now if you're not in a physics career? How important is empathy? Super, super important. What did we spend more time learning? We didn't talk about leadership. We haven't talked about empathy. We haven't talked about compassion. We haven't talked about conflict resolution in the ways that you actually need. A lot of the problems in life actually come from people. They're interrelational. But we spend so little time actually working on developing those skills to where leaders need support. And that's not to say male leaders need females to do it. It's like, no, leaders need to be equipped to lead. And I think we're putting people in leadership positions or raising up, cool, you're going to be a father now. Cool, you're going to be a husband before they've ever been equipped. And so I think the challenge is really like, we could go at
right?
each other. We could go back and forth, men, women, you. But that's like over half of marriages fail. It's because we're looking for the problems to come. Okay, the problem's not with me, problem's with you. In reality, the problem's with a society that has ill-equipped us. And that doesn't actually put us in a better place saying like, cool, we're not equipped. It's then on us to look at the problem, not men and women opposed, but to actually turn and look out at it and say, this is an issue. How do we grow in learning how to do this? How do we figure out how to move in harmony? How do we learn this dynamic and unlearn all the things that we've picked up through childhood, through society, through culture that is not healthy?
Which means we all got to be patient with each other. For real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was good. Yeah, man, like we're learning as we go as men. A lot of us are learning, all of us, men and women. And I understand the importance to be a good leader. However, when it's vocalized to me, like when a woman tells me how they need me to lead, I feel immense pressure because I'm still learning how to do that. I haven't had good examples, unfortunately. And it makes me want to honestly just take the time to learn Um, I believe that I will never arrive, at like being the perfect leader. But um, yeah, when I look at it, I think that women. Sorry, I'm getting a call. Women have attributes that are very useful when it comes in a partnership. They can see things that I can't, and even as an individual, they can see things in their own way, and I can see things in my own way. And I think that those are both equally valid and important. And I don't want my vision to be dominant. You know, perhaps it falls into it in a certain way that signifies leader, but I don't want it to be the dominant force because I don't want to dominate anything. You know, that's where I'm at. Last question is how do we as men cope with mental health or mental health issues, and what helps us cope in a healthy way?
Being on my purpose as much as possible, and in purpose through me working on my purpose, I'm being transparent with myself, which means I have to be very honest with the things that I desire. I can't really be ashamed or flex on any of those things. Like I've learned that that lofty idea, that thing that's so ridiculous to even try to attempt because you may lack certain resources. I have to abandon the idea that I'm lacking anything and that it's for me. It's out there in the universe, whatever. God put it in me to get it to be made, so it needs to be done, right? So I'm unashamed, therefore I'm on my purpose constantly. And I just try to believe that God doesn't leave us to be in the dry, you know what I'm saying? And just leave us to be or whatever. I believe pressure makes diamonds. I believe that knowing that times, things just you have these periods of difficulties, but they're all leading you towards a greater thing. Because think of childbirth, where it's like a woman has to go through that much pain, and the end result is a new life, and you don't even know what that child is going to grow up to be. So you know what I mean? Yeah. So in that regards, mental health, and let's do some good music and talk to people, talk to friends, have people to confide into, but also confide into God. I've been finding this quarantine has been really focusing on that. I think it's designed to bring us in home because we're not in the churches no more or the mosque or wherever. This is the real house of God. So I have to start speaking more to God. You know what I mean? And the Quran says He's closer to you than the jugular vein. So yeah, mental health.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just big. I'm really big on building habits. One of the things that I've learned is that almost everything we do is a habit, and so when through understanding habit science and understanding how to build habits and replace habits, whether they're habits of mind or actions, etc. Through that process, I've been able to, really, big meditation is really big for me. And through that, I've been able to just be really aware of how my body responds and how my mind responds to different environments and people, etc. And just learning from others. And a lot of the science is out there. And so, a big thing for me, I have a morning routine that includes meditation, it includes journaling, it includes a gratitude habit, and all of that's really important for me to maintain perspective and yeah, just take care of myself. And I think the two biggest areas that I've grown in recently is one is sleep and one is just in general, just rest. Sleep was something that I never valued because I was taught that you can sleep when you're dead, you know what I mean? And it's like, no, the fucking science tells you that sleep makes literally everything better.
Everything, yeah.
And if you don't sleep, you're gonna die faster. So so that's been big, and that actually contributes to all the other habits. Exercise is another thing that's big for me. But then on the terms of rest, I think I really internalized hustle culture and would feel guilty about resting. And it took me burning out a couple of times to realize You know, I think about it a lot of times with like with physical exertion. You don't go to the gym or run a ton of miles and then say, I'm going to go and run a ton more miles. You say, I'm going to go rest my body,
Yes, yeah.
you know, but
So you
for some
build
reason
up.
with mental exertion, we haven't made that connection that, oh, now you need to rest your mind and allow yourself to recharge. And so that's been a big thing for me. It's just creating boundaries with work, with relationships, and making sure that I'm making time, like putting it in my schedule. All right, this is time where I'm not doing anything but resting. And so that's been big for me.
I blame Gary Vee for the hustle stuff. I'm
He's
joking.
coming around though. He's yeah. I mean, I think
I'm joking.
he's sort of his approach is more like just make sure the hours that you want to do something
Yeah.
are actually valuable. But yeah, I fuck with Gary though.
Oh yeah, yeah. That, I do too. You know, it's all about the moderation behind what he
For
says.
sure.
You know, yeah.
I
For
think
me,
I've,
in mental health, I like to think I'm pretty self-aware, and it comes from a lot of the self-help books. I recently realized that I kind of want to stray away from that and armor myself with the Word of God, learning and understanding it. I feel like a lot of the concepts that are in the self-help books are actually like stories within the Bible that you could learn and adhere to, and practice in real life. And once you do those type of things each and every day, like mentally, you're there. Um, yeah.
yeah, I think I'm in a similar place in which I'm actively trying to um, learn the biblical truth behind things and apply them. I found that periods of my life in which I have been the most peaceful and nourishing. When I stray from that, it becomes more confusing, becomes more distressing. Um, but I think nowadays, getting to what purpose, like Jamal said, like going out and intentionally connecting with my environment, with people, makes me feel centered, as well as routine for sure, like having a morning routine, um, and then talking to God. Yeah, so I mean, everything you guys have said. Like when I feel super stressed, just like shutting down everything, listening to what God wants me to do in this moment, doing that, and then the next moment and the next moment, and just collectively that compounds to a point in which I feel in alignment, and then I have a sense of peace again. But when I'm astray, it's just I can't do it. You know, I think I'm trying to learn how to gain the discipline to never. Well, I mean, I'm probably going to go astray at some points, but like less often go astray. I want to be in tune with what God's telling me to do and how to move more often than not. You know, cool. Eric, you have any thoughts on this or?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the question's essentially like, how do we? I think the word cope for me feels a little weird, in that like coping doesn't really address a problem. Coping kind of like just covers something for a bit. Or it's like, cool, this is the situation. I'm just gonna cope until it eases up a bit. But it's not actually a solution, which I think that's perhaps just semantics. I don't mean to pick apart the question, but I think like it's important in talking about rest to acknowledge like, yeah, like Netflix, like binge watching Netflix might be able to be like branded as rest, but it's actually not restful. Like there's a lot of things that we can do that are like rest or me time that are just not nourishing. You know, sitting down to a Twinkie is not a meal. And so in those regards, like I think it's important to really like I think through our distress. I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said like man exists in a state of quiet desperation. And I think like that's true on a lot of ways where I think like if we try to settle before, I don't think we'll really have rest fully um, until we've reached like full self-actualization. And so we know that I am everything I was made to be. Whereas if you're resting like too much, you're just like you're truncating a part of your spirit that you know you're still meant to grow. And so I think in a lot of ways, like um, you know, if you think about car, like an explosion, like not explosion, like an engine, like a car as it's going, it's actually a bunch of tiny explosions happening. That's why, you know, you fill it with gas, but it's like a combustion engine. It's like, but the car's not exploding. It's just there's tiny explosions happening, and it propels the car along. And I think in a lot of ways, there are things that are going to explode within us. There's until we're perfect, like things are going to, yep, oh wow, that was a lie. How to let that go? Like there's so much trauma, so much healing, so much growth. Where like I think it's just actually it's important to make sure that you're grounded, and that I think it was you, Jamal, earlier talking about like energy, how it's not lost. Yeah, it's like energy is never lost. And I think in that way, like, okay, cool, this is coming, life is coming with this much force. Where can I turn this force in a way that's healthy, that doesn't, I've thought a lot of like, cool. I'm juggling a lot of things. Like a ball's going to drop. I'm going to have to drop something. I just hope it doesn't drop on people. And so I think learning where to throw things when they're too much has been kind of like, we talked about like meditation. I think those things are really important to anchor us, but I think like there's a natural progression that's happening in life where rest is progressive, rest is productive. We grow within rest, we're restored. Muscles rip in working out, but then they grow back stronger. And so I don't know, I mean, I guess that's, if I were to just,
that's it. Yeah.
Can I add something real quick to what Eric's saying? Like,
you guys
real quick. Just I found that with the whole purpose thing is that it just helps when you it's simplifying as well. I've had to simplify a lot of things that I felt like I had to do, and the things that especially when it came to my goals, and I realized I didn't have to do everything. It's kind of like your body is you have all these different things in it, like your organs and all that, but the heart is not trying to be the brain is not trying to be the stomach, that kind of thing. Each piece has its own role or whatever. So I found that when I simplified and I focused on my strengths and what I really wanted to do, then everything else just went away. All the anxiety went away. So just to add to the when you said juggling, I thought about that though. So
it's great.
Yeah. I love how this conversation is pointing to God again and again and again, which offers that consistency that we're all looking for. Even when it comes to rest, like God was productive until then he rested, which he found also productive. And God simplified, like each day was for a specific purpose. He did something specific on each day, and then he rested. Super good. You guys are super wise. Like I learned a lot in the past hour and a half almost. Like I learned tremendously. So thank you for sharing your thoughts and your time. Do you guys have any last thoughts concerning this topic?
I think if this is, the way I understood it for coming on as men to talk about relationships, women, females, I think like, I guess if there are any women watching this, like we love you. And I think like ultimately we're all growing, we're all still figuring things out. And it's in all of our best interest to be tender with each other as we're figuring things out and navigating life, because life deals blows that no one can take, and sometimes we all get knocked down, but we love you, we need you.
Bro, Daniel, thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Yo, I'm super thankful, like tremendously. I'm glad you guys got something out of it as well, whether it is release or like insight. And I know that when people watch this, they're also going to get something out of it. Women and men,
Yep.
And I resonate with what Eric said. Like we have love for one another. Like women, we love you. Men, we love you as brothers. Like there's love like at our deepest core, and we're trying to figure out how to bring that to the surface.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Peace.
Thank
Peace.
you.
Yeah.
Be great.
Eric. Have a good one.